Imagine a show so loved it became a classic, yet it almost didn't survive its pilot. On screen, Three's Company was pure comedy. Behind the scenes, it played out more like a soap opera. Ruthless executives, critical backlash, disputes that fractured the cast, and hurt feelings that lingered for decades. But also, it was absolute genius. Here's everything you probably didn't know about Three's Company, the sitcom that shaped modern television more than we think. Okay, let's start here. Three's Company wasn't an American invention. The show was an adaptation of the British sitcom Man About the House. In the British version, two young women take in a male roommate and pretend he's gay to placate their prudish landlord. A daring premise for the time that was closely mirrored by the US remake. American producers Don Nickel, Michael Ross, and Bernie West secured rights to remake the series for ABC, seeing potential in its mix of slapstick and sexual innuendo set against the era's changing social norms. But this was the first stumbling block for the show, one so big it almost never came to be. Translating British humor to American TV was not straightforward. Before Three's Company ever hit the air, the project stumbled through 3 failed pilot episodes and multiple cast changes. Early drafts tried shifting the setting from London to New York, then to North Hollywood, and finally to beachy Santa Monica. Even the lead character's backstory kept changing. At one point, Jack Tripper was written as an aspiring filmmaker before writers settled on making him a culinary student who needed a place to stay. And casting was its own saga. Joyce DeWitt won the role of level-headed brunette Janet in the second pilot, but the original choice for the bubbly blonde Chrissy didn't stick. An actress named Susan Lanier played Chrissy in one pilot, only for ABC executive Fred Silverman to insist on finding a better fit. As the story goes, Silverman was reviewing audition tapes when he spotted a near-forgotten clip of Suzanne Somers, a struggling actress whose biggest credit to date was a bit part in American Graffiti. Somers was rushed in to reshoot the pilot with DeWitt and John Ritter, and at last the trio's chemistry ignited. The third pilot, aptly titled A Man About the House, aired on March 15, 1977, officially launching Three's Company. When viewers first saw Jack Tripper meet Janet and Chrissy, the setup was almost identical to its British predecessor. Jack wakes up in their bathtub after a party, proves his worth by cooking breakfast, and then moves in on the condition he pretend to be gay so the landlord will allow a co-ed arrangement. It was a premise both risque and farcical, and American audiences had seen nothing quite like it in a sitcom before. That angle was both the show's ace in the hole, but also a pain in its side. You see, Three's Company hit the airwaves at a time when television was gingerly testing the boundaries of sexual content. The idea of an unmarried man and 2 women sharing an apartment was considered taboo by some in 1977. Even before the show premiered, a few conservative and religious groups voiced outrage. The National Federation for Decency, led by Reverend Donald Wildman, objected to the show's suggestive premise and launched a boycott campaign. In one instance, Wildman's group politely asked Sears, a major sponsor, to pull its advertising from Three's Company, and get this, Sears actually agreed. A handful of local ABC affiliates, particularly in more conservative regions, were reportedly uneasy about airing the show's pilot, deeming its co-ed living scenario too indecent for primetime. The network braced for controversy. It even aired a disclaimer in some markets, essentially warning viewers about the show's content. And yet, when Three's Company finally premiered, the backlash proved relatively short-lived. In fact, curiosity about the scandalous sitcom may have boosted its initial ratings. Audiences quickly discovered that beneath the bawdy setup was a warm, goofy comedy about 3 friends who do anything for each other. The show deftly balanced double entendres with classic slapstick, anchored by John Ritter's expert physical comedy. The ratings spoke for themselves. After just 6 spring trial episodes in 1977, Three's Company shocked the industry by ranking 11th among all TV shows for the season, an unheard-of debut performance. By the next year, it was a full-fledged hit. ABC moved the show to a plum time slot after Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, and Three's Company held its own at number 3 in the ratings for the 1977-78 season. In 1978-79, it climbed even higher, nudging past Happy Days to become the number 2 top-rated show on American television. At the peak of its popularity, around 1979-80, Three's Company was the number 1 rated TV comedy in the country. For several years, it was a staple of ABC's lineup, consistently in the top 10. In fact, it only fell out of the top 10 in its very last season. Yet the criticism persisted. Television critics often snubbed Three's Company as lowbrow jiggle TV that relies on cheap sexual jokes. But viewers didn't mind. They kept tuning in for the pratfalls, innuendo, and the lovable trio at the center. And over time, the initial moral panic faded. The idea of Jack Tripper pretending to be gay to live with his female friends, which once raised eyebrows, came to be seen as just a silly comic device indicative of its era. If anything, the show was surprisingly chaste beneath the surface. As many have noted, nobody on Three's Company was actually shown having sex, not even the show's one married couple, the Ropers. It was all implication and misunderstanding, a bedroom farce where the bedroom door never truly opened. Now, what made the show sing was the genius of its three leads: John Ritter, Joyce DeWitt, and Suzanne Somers. Off-screen, the cast initially enjoyed an easy camaraderie. By all accounts, Ritter was the jovial leader on set, a prankster who kept things light, and DeWitt and Somers formed a genuine friendship in the early seasons. But storm clouds were brewing by the fourth year. Somers' sudden fame came with opportunities, Vegas club offers, product endorsements, and growing resentment that as the show's breakout star, she was being paid far less than her male counterparts in TV. In 1980, during contract renegotiations for what would be season 5, Suzanne Somers decided to take a stand that would alter the course of the show. She asked ABC for a major salary increase, from $30,000 per episode to $150,000, equal to what male TV stars, and reportedly her co-star John Ritter, were making. In essence, Somers wanted pay parity with her male lead. She felt Chrissy was as vital to Three's Company's success as Jack. And that's where things got ugly. The network was only willing to offer a token bump of about $5,000. And ultimately, the show's producers and network brass took a hard line. According to Somers' husband, Alan Hamel, a former TV producer who acted as her negotiator, this went beyond dollars and cents. ABC wanted to make an example out of Somers. Laverne and Shirley had just negotiated a monster deal, Hamel noted, and the network decided they needed to make an example of female actresses so that no other woman would ask to be paid what men were making. And then Suzanne was fired. Indeed, after Somers refused to back down, ABC swiftly fired her in 1981 instead of coming to terms. It was a bombshell move that shocked fans and sent a clear, if chilling, message through Hollywood at the time. And in the aftermath, the atmosphere on set turned poisonous. Somers still had a few episodes left on her contract for season 5, but the producers barred her from interacting with John Ritter or Joyce DeWitt on camera. To fulfill her remaining airtime, they concocted awkward Chrissy on the phone scenes, brief snippets of Chrissy calling home from out of town, which Somers filmed separately on a closed set. In a surreal twist, she was escorted to and from these isolated shoots by a police guard, as if to underscore how unwelcome she was. For the rest of the cast, it was an uncomfortable and tense period. Their colleague had effectively been exiled in front of their eyes. Now, fans have wondered for decades, why didn't Ritter or DeWitt speak up or protest? Well, at the time, both were fearful for their own jobs. Three's Company was a well-oiled machine and a major paycheck. Publicly rallying behind Somers could have meant career suicide. Somers later noted that not a single co-star or Hollywood women's organization came to her defense in 1980. The network successfully painted her as greedy and ungrateful, and she was quietly shunned. Ritter and DeWitt continued on with the show, while Somers became persona non grata in TV for years. A cautionary tale of asking for too much. As Somers put it, never think that you are not replaceable. Rule number 1, a lesson she learned the hard way. And ABC wasted no time replacing Somers. For the remainder of season 5, ABC brought in a temporary roommate, Chrissy's clumsy cousin, Cindy Snow, played by Jenna Lee Harrison. Cindy was a stopgap. Her ditzy klutz routine was essentially Chrissy light, but audiences never fully warmed to the change. By the next season, Cindy was written out to make room for a more permanent Chrissy successor, Terry Alden, a smart but sexy nurse portrayed by Priscilla Barnes. Terry moved in with Jack and Janet in 1981, and Barnes remained through the end of the series in 1984. Off-screen, though, the damage was done. The tight-knit camaraderie of the early seasons was replaced by lingering resentment and sorrow. Joyce DeWitt later admitted that after Somers' firing, she and Suzanne did not speak for over 30 years. The rift wasn't due to a personal falling out between the two actresses. It was the circumstance of the contract dispute that drove them apart. DeWitt felt Suzanne's actions had imperiled the show, while Somers felt abandoned by her friends. John Ritter, too, remained estranged from Somers for decades. It wasn't until 2003, on the eve of Ritter's untimely death, that he unexpectedly reached out to Suzanne Somers in a phone call. In that call, Ritter said, "I forgive you," and the two spoke warmly about possibly working together again. Now, while the Chrissy saga was the most explosive drama on Three's Company, Suzanne Somers wasn't the only actor who felt like they got screwed over. Back in season 4 in 1979, the show underwent a significant transition. The beloved older landlords, Stanley and Helen Roper, played by Norman Fell and Audra Lindley, were spun off into their own show, The Ropers. That left Three's Company without its resident comedic foil, someone for the roommates to trick and play off. The writers responded by creating a new landlord character, Ralph Furley, a gaudy dresser and delusional ladies' man in his 50s, who thought of himself as a swinging stud. It was a role tailor-made for a particular type of comedian. In fact, the producers realized they needed not just a type, but the genuine article. They needed Don Knotts. Don Knotts was flattered but initially terrified. At 54, he was considerably older than the rest of the cast and unsure if he could adapt to the show's racy, contemporary style of humor. Three's Company was also filmed with a live studio audience, unlike the single-camera laugh track format of Andy Griffith. But the producers played into Knotts' insecurities brilliantly by turning them into Furleys. They outfitted him in loud, technicolor polyester outfits and neckerchiefs, accentuating that Mr. Furley was an aging wannabe hipster trying a bit too hard. Knotts needn't have worried. His very first entrance on set, decked out in a zoot suit and ascot, earned a standing ovation from the studio audience that lasted what felt like 10 minutes, one producer recalled. Don Knotts' arrival not only filled the Roper void, it gave Three's Company a second wind. In Knotts' first full season, 1979 to 80, the show's ratings actually surged. Three's Company hit its highest ranking ever, the second most watched show on TV. Audiences adored Ralph Furley's comedic vanity, from his gawky wide-eyed double takes to his catchphrases. Mr. Furley also brought new dynamics. He was both ally and antagonist to the roommates. Unlike Mr. Roper, who was suspicious of Jack's sexuality, Furley was eager to prove his own virility, leading to hilarious scenes where he'd seek tips from Jack or awkwardly attempt to flirt with girls out of his league. Knotts' comfort on the show grew quickly, and he remained with Three's Company through its final episode in 1984, endearing himself to a new generation of fans. But this didn't work out very well for the Ropers. If you ask Norman Fell, they got screwed over by the producers. Here's why. When the Ropers debuted in spring 1979, it initially looked promising. Its very first batch of episodes ranked number 8 for the season, buoyed by curiosity from Three's Company fans. But then ABC moved the show to a less favorable time slot that fall. Ratings slid, and by the end of the 1979 to 80 season, the Ropers was struggling. ABC pulled the plug and canceled the series in May 1980. It had lasted barely a year. Here's the kicker. Norman Fell had been reluctant to leave Three's Company in the first place. He knew how special his role as Mr. Roper was. Producers only convinced Fell to do the spinoff by promising that if the Ropers failed within 1 year, he and Lindley could return to Three's Company. It was essentially a safety net clause. But by lasting into a second season, albeit briefly, the Ropers technically exceeded the 1-year window. So when it was canceled in 1980, the producers told Fell that Stanley and Helen Roper would not be coming back. The show had already moved on, having firmly installed Don Knotts' Ralph Furley as the new landlord. Fell was reportedly very disappointed, feeling he'd been screwed by a technicality. Over the years, all sides expressed regret at how it played out. The Ropers did make one guest appearance on Three's Company in 1981, a cameo to wish the roommates good luck. A brief nostalgic treat for fans, but their days as regulars were over. And this wasn't the only spin-off attempt to go south. ABC immediately tried to continue the franchise with Three's a Crowd, a spin-off/sequel focusing on Jack Tripper's life after the trio disbanded. In the series finale of Three's Company, Jack meets and falls in love with a woman named Vicky Bradford, played by Mary Carteret, and moves in with her. Three's a Crowd, which premiered in September 1984, picks up that storyline. Jack now cohabitates with Vicky and pursues his dream of running a restaurant, while clashing with Vicky's disapproving father, Robert Mandan. But by removing the original show's core concept, the three-roommate dynamic and all its comedic misunderstandings, many felt Three's a Crowd lost the spark. It became a more conventional romantic comedy, and even John Ritter's talents couldn't elevate the middling material. Critics noted a lack of chemistry between Ritter and Carteret compared to the old trio. The show also suffered from a glaring absence. Except for a single guest spot by Richard Klein as Larry Dallas, none of the beloved Three's Company supporting cast carried over. There was no Janet, no Furley, leaving Jack in a world that didn't quite feel like the one fans knew. Ratings for Three's a Crowd were modest at best. Making matters worse, ABC scheduled it opposite NBC's smash hit The A-Team, virtually guaranteeing an uphill battle for viewership. By spring 1985, Three's a Crowd was faltering in the ratings race. John Ritter, aware of the show's creative struggles, was reluctant to continue without a strong commitment from ABC. He reportedly told the network he wouldn't do a second season unless they guaranteed a full 22-episode order, something ABC was unwilling to do given the numbers. Facing declining ratings and a hesitant star, ABC canceled Three's a Crowd after just one season. And so, in spring 1985, the Three's Company franchise finally came to a close. In syndication, the reruns of Three's a Crowd were often bundled with Three's Company, sometimes under the title Three's Company 2, which I've got to say is pretty clever. But for most fans, the spin-off was a footnote, a testament that lightning doesn't strike twice. And in that sense, the end of Three's Company in 1984 marked the end of an era for its stars, who all faced the challenge of moving on from such an iconic and defining project. John Ritter, forever beloved as Jack Tripper, continued to work prolifically in television and film, remaining a familiar face, though he never quite shook Jack's shadow. In 2002, he found sitcom success again with 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter, bringing his career full circle as a TV dad. Tragically, Ritter died in 2003 at just 54, but not before winning a new generation of fans. Suzanne Somers, after being ousted in 1981, took a longer road back to Hollywood's good graces. Blacklisted from network TV for much of the 80s, she reinvented herself in Las Vegas, headlining a popular musical revue act that showcased her singing and comedy. In time, Somers turned her celebrity into a lifestyle empire, writing best-selling books, promoting fitness products, who can forget the Thigh Master, and becoming a health and beauty entrepreneur. By the late 80s, she cautiously dipped a toe back into sitcoms. In 1991, Somers landed a co-starring role on ABC's family comedy, Step by Step, playing mom, Carol Foster Lambert, opposite Patrick Duffy. The show ran for 7 seasons, firmly re-establishing Somers as a TV star. The stance that got her labeled difficult in 1980, demanding equal pay, has, in hindsight, bolstered her reputation. In recent years, many have come to view Somers as a pioneer on the issue of pay equity. Joyce DeWitt, who played the reliable Janet, took a markedly different path. After Three's Company ended, DeWitt stepped back from the Hollywood spotlight almost entirely. A trained theater actress, she returned to the stage, performing in regional theater productions and national tours of plays and musicals. In one of her rare public comments, DeWitt reflected on the show's legacy of laughter, emphasizing that its true value was how it brought people joy. And that's really how the show should be remembered. Highbrow critics may have turned up their noses, but millions of viewers adored the show's fun-loving escapism. In syndication, Three's Company thrived. Starting in summer 1982, reruns aired nationally, even before the show finished first-run episodes, and quickly became a fixture of daytime TV. Throughout the late 80s and 90s, you could almost always find Jack, Janet, and Chrissy, or Terry, somewhere on the dial, their misadventures continuing to draw laughs. The enduring popularity in syndication speaks to the show's timeless humor, misunderstandings, and physical comedy that still land, even as social attitudes have evolved beyond some of the dated gay panic jokes. Three's Company also proved influential to later generations of sitcoms. Its roommate comedy template, young single friends sharing space and navigating relationship hijinks, paved the way for shows like Friends in the 90s and New Girl in the 2000s. The DNA of Three's Company is evident whenever a sitcom milks comedy from will they or won't they roommate tension or a goofy misunderstanding with sexual overtones. Behind the scenes, it was a microcosm of Hollywood itself. Creative risk-taking, clashing egos, battles over credit and compensation, and the bittersweet realities of fame. But as Joyce DeWitt eloquently said, the true gift of Three's Company was that it created an opportunity for all of us to laugh together. It's a profound gift, 4 decades later, that gift keeps on giving in reruns and reunions, reminding us that sometimes Three's not a crowd at all. It's just right.